The Sinkhole City, Part 1. The earthquake struck in the early hours of the morning. It was felt all through the city, but some areas were worse hit than others. There were buildings and roads with a few hairline cracks around different parts of the city, but the big cracks were lining the edge of a giant sinkhole and of what would become the bridge. Then there was the fall, although it was more of a slump, as the hills outside the city rose up higher than they should be, much higher, and a tiny waterfall began to fall from the side of a branch of the river. That day, people mostly just survived. They repaired the small things that they could, they helped their neighbours, and they dealt with the shock of what had happened. By the early afternoon, half the children and some of the youth had gotten over the shock and were starting to be curious about their new surroundings half underground. Some of the adults were as well, but they wouldn't admit it at that stage. The next day, help began to come in from the few suburbs left outside the sinkhole, and from a few nearby towns. There was a bit of government help eventually, but not much. This was the 18th century, and they were further north than most cities in Canada that could help. Then they began to prepare for the real repairs. Not that the damage was too bad in most parts of the city. It was mostly just around the edges where the big cracks had formed. Thank you for listening. That was part 1 of The Sinkhole City. A reading extract from the ebook Unfinished World, available on the Kobo store.